The applause filled the grand assembly hall like thunder. Thousands of hands clapping together, thousands of voices cheering for the old warrior who walked slowly toward the stage. General Rin Solith had seen better days. Her gray scales showed the marks of age and battle. 3 of her 4 arms carried scars that would never heal. One eye was replaced with a mechanical lens that glowed soft blue in the dim light. She walked with a limp that spoke of old wounds and older memories. But when she reached the podium and turned to face the crowd, every soul in that massive hall fell silent. This was the most decorated soldier in the history of the Galactic Confederation. This was the warrior who had fought in 23 campaigns across 6 star systems. This was a legend made flesh. The young cadets in the front rows stared at her with wide eyes. They had grown up hearing stories about General Solith. They had studied her tactics in their military academies. They had dreamed of one day earning even a fraction of her glory. The Confederation president stepped forward and placed the Medal of Eternal Valor around her neck. It was the highest honor any soldier could receive. Only 11 beings in history had ever worn it. Rin was the 12th. General Solith, the president said, his voice carried by speakers throughout the hall, your service to the Confederation spans 30 years. Your victories have protected billions of lives. Your wisdom has shaped the very nature of our military. We honor you today not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of everything our people can achieve. More applause, more cheering. Rin stood still and let it wash over her like rain on stone. When the noise finally died down, she leaned toward the microphone. Her voice was rough, damaged by years of shouting orders over the sounds of battle. Thank you, she said simply. I have been asked to share some wisdom with the young officers who will one day take my place, so I will tell you the most important lesson I ever learned. The hall became so quiet that you could hear the soft hum of the air systems. A young cadet in the front row raised his hand. He was barely out of his training, his scales still bright green with youth. General, what was your most difficult campaign? Which enemy tested you the most? Rin looked at the young male for a long moment. Something changed in her face. The pride faded, the calm confidence disappeared. What replaced it was something the audience had never expected to see on the face of a legend. Fear. You want to know about real war? She asked quietly. You want to know what true difficulty looks like? The cadet nodded eagerly. Rin gripped the edges of the podium with all 4 hands. Then let me tell you about the time we invaded Earth. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. Everyone knew about the First Contact War. Everyone knew it had ended badly, but the details had been classified for 15 years. No one talked about what really happened. I was a fleet commander then, Rin continued. Young and stupid and full of confidence. The Confederation gave me 200,000 soldiers, the finest warriors from 12 worlds, the most advanced weapons our scientists could build. She paused and looked out over the sea of faces watching her. I led them to Earth. I was told it would be an easy conquest. The humans were a young species. They had only recently discovered space travel. Their weapons were primitive. Their planet was small. Victory was certain. Rin's mechanical eye flickered. I returned with fewer than 8,000 soldiers. The rest are still on Earth. Their bones are scattered across mountains and forests and cities. Their graves are unmarked. Their names are forgotten by everyone except me. The silence in the hall had become something heavy, something that pressed down on everyone present. 192,000 dead, Rin said, against a species that had never fought an interstellar war before, against a people we called primitive, against a world we thought would fall in 3 days. She straightened her old body and looked directly at the young cadet who had asked the question. You asked what my most difficult campaign was. The answer is simple. The humans. Fighting humans was the worst thing I have ever experienced, and I am going to tell you why. Rin stepped back from the podium and gestured for a chair. An aide rushed forward with one, and the old general sat down heavily. Her joints ached. Her scars throbbed with remembered pain. Get comfortable, she told the audience. This will take some time, and when I am finished, you will understand why the Confederation signed a peace treaty instead of sending more soldiers. You will understand why we now call humans our allies instead of our enemies." She closed her real eye and took a deep breath. "They taught us that some worlds should never be touched, some species should never be challenged, and I will tell you exactly why." The cadets leaned forward in their seats. The officers held their breath. The president himself sat down in the front row, his face pale. And General Rin Solith began to tell the truth about fighting humans. 15 years melted away as Rin spoke. Her voice carried the audience back through time, back to the days when she was younger and foolish and believed that victory was always possible. "We tested our invasion on a small human colony first," she said. "A world called New Bristol, far from Earth itself, 20,000 colonists, farmers and miners and families trying to build a new life." She remembered the way her fleet had appeared in the sky above that little world, hundreds of ships blocking out the sun. The colonists had looked up and known that resistance was impossible. They surrendered within hours. No fighting, no tricks. They simply put down their tools and raised their hands. Our soldiers walked through their settlements and found nothing but cooperation. Rin shook her head slowly. "We thought this was how all humans would behave. We were wrong. New Bristol was a colony of peaceful workers. They had no soldiers. They had no weapons. They gave up because they had no choice." Her mechanical eye zoomed in on the young faces in the front row. "Earth was different. Earth was home, and humans do not surrender their home." The memory of the invasion fleet approaching Earth still gave her nightmares. Thousands of ships descending through the blue atmosphere, troop carriers filled with confident soldiers. Everyone expected an easy victory. "The first warning came from the planet itself," Rin said. "Earth is heavier than most habitable worlds. The gravity pulls harder." Our soldiers stepped out of their ships and immediately felt the difference. Every movement took more effort. Every step was harder than it should have been. She rubbed one of her arms, remembering the ache. "The second warning was the air. Earth has more oxygen than we were used to. It made our soldiers dizzy and aggressive. Some of them started fighting each other before they even saw a human." A soft murmur ran through the audience. They had studied planetary conditions in their training. They knew that environmental factors could affect military operations, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it was different. "The third warning came from the wildlife." Rin's voice dropped lower. "A patrol of 12 soldiers was sent to scout a forest region, standard reconnaissance mission. They were supposed to report back in 6 hours." She paused. "We found their bodies 3 days later. Something had torn them apart. Not humans, not weapons, an animal. The humans called it a bear." Gasps from the audience. Civilized worlds did not have predators large enough to kill armed soldiers. Most species had eliminated such creatures thousands of years ago. That was when my science officer came to me with her report. I will never forget the look on her face. She was terrified. Rin stood up slowly from her chair and walked back to the podium. She told me that Earth was not a garden world. It was a death world, a planet where everything evolved to survive against everything else. The plants were toxic. The insects carried diseases. The animals were killers. Even the weather could destroy you. She gripped the podium again. And then she told me the worst part. She said, "Commander, the dominant species evolved here. They are adapted to this nightmare. They are not victims of this world. They are its greatest predator." The silence in the hall was absolute. "We had expected to find farmers," Rin said. "Peaceful beings who had accidentally discovered technology. Simple creatures who would bow down when they saw our power." She let out a bitter laugh. "Instead, we found apex predators wearing clothes. Hunters who had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against a world that wanted them dead. Survivors who had clawed their way to the top of the food chain through nothing but determination and violence." Rin turned and looked at a screen behind her. An image appeared showing the Earth from orbit. Blue and green and white, beautiful and deadly. That planet created humans. That world shaped them into what they are, and we had just landed 200,000 soldiers on its surface. She turned back to the audience. The human military responded within hours, but they did not fight us the way we expected. They did not line up in formations. They did not charge at our positions. They simply retreated into the wilderness and disappeared. Her voice grew quieter, and then they started hunting us. The image on the screen changed to show dense forests and towering mountains, places where an army could vanish, places where death could hide behind every tree. We landed expecting farmers who would surrender. We found apex predators who had been fighting each other since the beginning of their existence. Every human we met carried the genetic memory of 10,000 years of warfare. They were born knowing how to kill. They were raised understanding how to survive. Rin sat back down heavily. Within 1 week, we had lost 10,000 soldiers, not to battles, not to organized attacks, just to humans appearing from nowhere, killing and vanishing again. She looked at the young cadet who had asked the original question. That was when I realized we had made a terrible mistake, but by then, it was already too late to turn back. 3 weeks into the occupation, Rin had stopped sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of dead soldiers. Every time she tried to rest, another report came in about missing patrols and destroyed supply convoys. The humans did not fight like any enemy we had faced before, she told the assembly. They did not care about honor or glory. They did not follow the rules of warfare that every civilized species accepted. They only cared about winning. She leaned forward in her chair. Let me tell you about patience, real patience, the kind that makes you question everything you think you know about combat. The audience listened in complete silence. We discovered a human sniper who had been lying in the same position for 4 days. 4 days without moving, without eating, without making a sound. He waited in the mud and the cold until a Velthari officer walked into his sight line. Rin snapped 2 of her fingers together. 1 shot, 1 kill, and then he disappeared again. We searched for him for weeks. We never found him. She stood up and began pacing slowly across the stage. That was not unusual. That was normal for humans. They could wait longer than we could watch. They could hide better than we could search. They turned patience into a weapon, and they used it to destroy us piece by piece. A young officer in the audience raised her hand. General, what about their military forces? Surely they could not match our technology. Rin stopped pacing and looked at the officer with something like pity. Their technology was inferior. Their weapons were primitive by our standards. Their armor was weak. Their vehicles were slow. She smiled grimly. None of that mattered, because humans do not need superior technology to kill you. They just need determination. The memory of the mountain campaign flooded back. Rin had sent a battalion of 500 soldiers to secure a strategic pass. The humans had sent 12. 12 humans, she said, against 500 of our best warriors. Do you know how that battle ended? No one answered. The 12 humans won. They attacked at night, retreated before dawn, attacked again the next night, and continued this for 6 days. They never slept. They never stopped. They used the terrain like a weapon. They knew every rock, every tree, every shadow. Rin's voice grew heavy. By the end, our soldiers were so exhausted and terrified that they could barely hold their weapons. The humans picked them off one by one. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found 3 survivors hiding in a cave, too afraid to come out. She walked back to the podium. But the physical attacks were not the worst part. The humans understood something that we did not. They understood that war is not just about killing bodies. It is about breaking minds. The lights in the hall seemed to dim as she spoke. They sent us messages in our own language, recordings of our soldiers screaming, images of our dead. They played sounds through speakers hidden in the forest, strange music, laughter, whispers in the dark. Rin's hands trembled slightly. Our soldiers started seeing humans everywhere, in the shadows, behind every tree, in their own reflections. The medics called it shadow fear. It spread through our ranks like a disease. Soldiers would fire their weapons at nothing. They would refuse to go outside. Some of them took their own lives rather than face another night. She paused to collect herself. I captured a human soldier once. He was wounded badly. His leg was shattered. He had lost a lot of blood. Any normal creature would have been begging for mercy. Her mechanical eye flickered with the memory. He laughed at me. He was dying and he laughed. I asked him why his people fought so hard. I asked him why they would not simply surrender and save themselves. Rin looked out at the audience. He said something I will never forget. He said, "You made a mistake coming here. You think you are fighting an army. You are not. You are fighting a species. Every man, woman, and child on this planet will fight you until you leave or until we are all dead. There is no middle ground." She let those words hang in the air. I asked him what would happen if we brought more soldiers, if we brought enough firepower to destroy everything. He smiled with blood on his teeth and said, "You have no idea what you have started. We have not even called our veterans yet." A chill ran through the audience. I did not understand what he meant. I thought I was already fighting the human military. I thought I had seen the worst they could offer. Rin shook her head slowly. I was wrong. The soldiers we faced in those first weeks were just the beginning. The regular military, the active defenders. What came next was something far worse. She sat back down, suddenly looking very old and very tired. The veterans answered the call, the ones who had retired, the ones who had fought in human wars for decades, the ones who had killed more of their own kind than I had soldiers in my entire fleet. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. And when they arrived, the real nightmare began. 2 months into the invasion, Rin had moved her command center underground. The surface was no longer safe. Nothing was safe anymore. The veterans arrived quietly, she told the assembly. No announcements, no warnings. One day the attacks were bad. The next day they were organized, coordinated, lethal. She rubbed her scarred arms unconsciously. These were not soldiers defending their homes. These were hunters who had spent their entire lives learning how to kill. They came out of retirement because their species was threatened, and they brought all their experience with them. The memory of the first coordinated strike still haunted her. 3 supply depots destroyed in one night, 50 kilometers apart, perfect timing, no survivors. They targeted our supplies first. Food, medicine, ammunition. They knew that an army cannot fight without these things. Within 2 weeks, we were rationing everything. Soldiers were going hungry. The wounded were dying because we had no medicine to save them. Rin stood and walked to the edge of the stage. Then they came for our officers. Every commander above a certain rank became a target. They would find ways into our most secure locations. They would kill one person and leave everyone else alive, just to prove they could. She turned to face the audience directly. I will tell you about the night that broke something inside me, one of their special forces soldiers entered my command bunker, alone, in the middle of the night. He walked past 4 security checkpoints. He killed 30 of my soldiers without making a sound. The hall was utterly silent. When we found the bodies in the morning, there was a message written on the wall. In our language, in our blood. It said 2 words, "Go home." Rin let that image settle in the minds of her audience. That was when I started researching human history. I needed to understand what we were fighting. I needed to know how a species could produce warriors like this. She shook her head slowly. What I found terrified me more than anything I had seen on the battlefield. Walking back to the podium, she gripped it tightly with all 4 hands. Humans have been fighting each other since before they had written language. War is woven into their very existence. They have developed thousands of ways to kill. They have fought wars that lasted decades. They have created weapons designed not just to kill, but to cause suffering. Her voice grew heavier. They have a concept called total war. It means that every person in a society becomes part of the military effort. Workers build weapons. Children carry messages. Old people make supplies. Everyone fights. Everyone contributes. Everyone is a soldier. A murmur ran through the audience. In Confederation society, war was conducted by professionals. Civilians were never involved. But the worst part was not their history of violence. The worst part was their motivation. Rin looked at the young cadets in the front row. Humans fight hardest when they are protecting something. Not conquering, not expanding, protecting. Their families, their homes, their planet. Attack these things and you wake something terrible in the human soul. She pointed at her own chest. We attacked their home, we threatened their families, we tried to take their planet. And in doing so, we unified them in a way they had never been unified before. Every nation, every religion, every political group. They all stopped fighting each other and started fighting us. Her mechanical eye dimmed briefly. I petitioned High Command for withdrawal. I sent report after report explaining that victory was impossible. I begged them to let me bring my soldiers home before we lost everyone. She laughed bitterly. They told me to continue the operation. They said I was exaggerating. They ordered me to pacify the population and establish control. Rin looked at the Confederation president sitting in the front row. Pacify? As if you could pacify a species that has been fighting since the dawn of time. As if you could control a people who would rather die than submit. She turned away from the president. I told High Command something that got me removed from the official reports. I said, you cannot pacify a species that considers war an art form. You cannot defeat a people who have been practicing violence for longer than our civilization has existed. Rin sat down again, her old body creaking. They did not listen. They sent orders for a major offensive. They wanted us to take a city and force the humans to surrender. She closed her real eye. And then winter came. The planet itself decided to join the fight against us. The cold arrived like a weapon, and we learned that Earth did not want us there any more than the humans did. The cold came without mercy. Rin had experienced harsh environments before, but nothing like an Earth winter. The temperature dropped so fast that soldiers froze inside their armor. Equipment stopped working. Vehicles refused to start. We were not prepared, she told the assembly. Our species comes from a warm world. We had never experienced real cold. But humans had evolved through ice ages. They had survived winters that would have killed our entire civilization. To them, this was normal. She remembered watching human soldiers move through the snow like ghosts. Fast, silent, comfortable. Meanwhile, her own troops could barely walk without falling. High Command ordered the offensive anyway. They wanted us to capture a major city. They believed that if we took their capital, the humans would finally surrender. Rin shook her head. We gathered every soldier we could spare. 50,000 warriors marching toward a city of 3 million humans. We had air support. We had heavy weapons. We had every advantage except the one that mattered. Her voice grew quiet. We did not understand what humans would do to protect their homes. The memory of that battle never left her. The initial advance went well. The outer districts fell quickly. Human military forces seemed to retreat. Victory appeared close. It was a trap. They let us enter the city. They let us spread out through the streets, and then they collapsed buildings on top of us. Rin's hands clenched into fists. The humans had rigged their own structures with explosives. They destroyed their own property to bury our soldiers alive. Thousands of my warriors died in seconds, crushed under concrete and steel. She stood up abruptly. And then the street fighting began. Every building became a fortress. Every window hid a weapon. Every corner held an ambush. Humans attacked us with everything they had. Guns, knives, fire, their bare hands. I saw humans charge at armored soldiers with nothing but broken bottles, and they kept coming. Her voice cracked slightly. I watched a child throw a firebomb at one of our transports. A child, maybe 10 years old. He did not look scared. He looked angry. He looked like he wanted to kill every one of us personally. She paused to compose herself. That was when I understood. We were not conquering a planet. We were being bled dry by a species that would rather burn their own cities than submit to us. They would destroy everything they had built. They would sacrifice their children. They would turn their entire world to ash before they let us take it. Rin walked to the edge of the stage again. I made a decision that night. I did not ask permission from high command. I did not wait for orders. I ordered a retreat. The audience stirred. Unauthorized retreat was a serious crime in the Confederation military. I did not care about my career. I did not care about the consequences. I only cared about saving what remained of my soldiers. We had lost too many. We could not lose more. She turned back to face the assembly. I sent a message to the human resistance. I told them we were leaving. I asked for a ceasefire while we withdrew to our ships. I offered peace. Her mechanical eye flickered. Their response came within the hour. One word, no. The hall fell completely silent. They refused to let us leave peacefully. We had invaded their home. We had killed their people. We had threatened their existence, and they wanted us to pay for it. Rin's voice hardened. They said, you started this. Now you learn what happens to invaders. There will be no peace. There will be no mercy. There will only be consequences. She sat back down slowly. The retreat became a running battle. Every kilometer toward our ships cost us hundreds of lives. Humans attacked us constantly, day and night. They gave us no rest. They gave us no chance to recover. Her hands trembled. They chased us all the way to our landing. Zones, they shot at our ships as we took off. They followed us into orbit with their primitive spacecraft. They would not stop. They could not stop. Something in their nature refused to let an enemy escape unpunished. Rin looked at the ceiling, as if seeing stars beyond it. We lost 40,000 soldiers in the retreat. 40,000 more dead because I tried to save them, because I was not fast enough, because the humans were better hunters than we were prey. She lowered her gaze back to the audience. When we finally reached safe distance, I counted my survivors. Fewer than 8,000 remained, out of 200,000. The weight of that number pressed down on everyone in the hall. That was the end of the first contact war. Not with victory, not with glory, just with death and failure and a lesson that cost almost 200,000 lives to learn. The assembly hall had become a place of heavy silence. Every face showed shock. Every eye was fixed on the old general who had just confessed the greatest military disaster in Confederation history. Rin Soleth took a deep breath and continued. The Confederation sued for peace immediately. There was no other choice. We had lost nearly 200,000 soldiers, our fleet was damaged, our reputation was destroyed, and the humans were already building ships to come after us. She almost smiled. They demanded reparations, territory, resources, and one final condition that hurt more than all the others combined. Her mechanical eye focused on the young cadets in the front row. They demanded a promise. We would never return to their space. We would never threaten their people again. We would acknowledge that we had committed an act of aggression against a peaceful species, and we would apologize. Rin stood up straighter. The Confederation Council debated for 3 days. Some wanted to continue the war. Some wanted to send more soldiers, but the numbers did not lie. If we continued, we would lose everything. She walked slowly across the stage. I was called to testify before the council. They asked me if we could win with a larger force. I told them the truth. I said we could send our entire military to Earth, every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We would still lose, because we would be fighting not just an army but a species, and that species does not know how to surrender. The silence in the hall was absolute. The peace treaty was signed 1 month later. I was present at the ceremony, and I met the human general who had led the defense of Earth. Rin paused, remembering. She was small, her hair was gray, her face showed wrinkles from age and stress, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, dangerous. She looked at me like she was still deciding whether to kill me. A faint smile crossed her scarred face. I asked her why her people fought so hard, why they would not surrender even when death was certain, why they would sacrifice everything to defeat us. Rin looked at the audience. She said something I will never forget. She said, "We did not want this war. We wanted to be friends. We wanted to meet other species and learn from them. We dreamed of joining a community of worlds, but you chose to attack us. You chose to make us enemies. Remember that. Remember that you made this choice." She let those words echo through the hall. That is the truth about humans. They are not naturally violent. They are not born wanting war. They simply refuse to be conquered. They refuse to submit. And when you threaten them, they become the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Rin turned to address the young cadets directly. You think humans are weak because they smile and laugh and show kindness. You think they are soft because they talk about peace and cooperation. You are wrong. Her voice grew stronger. Their kindness is a choice. Their peace is a gift. They could destroy anything that threatens them, but they choose not to. They could hate every species that has ever harmed them, but they choose to forgive. She pointed at her medal of eternal valor. The Confederation now has a treaty with Earth. Humans are our allies. We trade with them. We share technology with them. They have saved our colonies from disasters. They have helped us fight actual enemies. Rin's voice softened. Thank every god you believe in for that alliance, because the alternative is extinction. The ceremony had officially ended 20 minutes ago. The audience should have left, but no one moved. Everyone waited for the general to finish. A young cadet finally raised her hand. "General Solith, did you ever go back to Earth?" Rin looked at the young female. Her expression changed from the hardness of a warrior to something gentler, something almost vulnerable. "Yes, I went back 10 years later, as a diplomat, as an ambassador of peace." She took a shaky breath. "Do you know what the humans did when they saw me? The general who had invaded their world, the commander who had killed their people." The cadet shook her head. "They invited me to dinner. They showed me their cities. They introduced me to their children, children who had never known war, children who smiled at me and asked questions about my home world." Rin's real eye glistened with moisture. "They called me friend after everything I had done. After all the death I had caused, they chose to forgive me. They chose to see me as a person instead of an enemy." She straightened her old body one final time. "That is why humans terrify me. Not their weapons, not their determination, not their refusal to surrender. What terrifies me is this: they can forgive anything and they can destroy everything. The same heart that offers mercy is the same heart that will burn worlds to protect what it loves." General Rin Solith looked out over the audience of young soldiers and old officers and powerful leaders. "Remember this when you think about humans. Remember that they did not want war. Remember that they only wanted peace. And remember that if you force them to fight, they will not stop until one side is completely destroyed." She stepped back from the podium. "Class dismissed."